Hey guys, today we're going to be looking at a GA kit that a lot of people who are pilots have probably not only have seen but probably started out on, and that is Minicraft's 1/48th scale Cessna 172 kit. Now, this kit, it took me a little while to sort of figure out exactly which version of the 172 this kit builds up to. And it looks like this one builds up to ultimately as is into the M version. So that's something to be aware of, and I will point out as best as I can where the various telltale signs that it is this particular variant are, and obviously what you would have to probably do if you wanted to build a different version. So let's get into it then. Adjust the camera a little. Okay. So, right out of the gate, I can already tell you that the kit is pretty well molded in terms of just the quality of the plastic. One thing I did notice right away is that it does have recessed rivets, which on a lot of kits that normally would be the correct thing. However, on the 172, I do know for a fact it has raised rivets. So that's one thing to be aware of. It's not the end of world type issue, but it's just something to be aware of in terms of accuracy. Looking right now at the main wing, or main upper part of the wing, again, as I said, a lot of fine detailing goes into it. We do have some raised detail here on the trailing edge, but it's not overdone and probably could be easily sanded down if you're that against it. Another thing to note on the wingtips, I'll try as best I can to show this, is that it has the outer bulge style of lights, so that's something to be aware of depending on the exact variant you're building. In addition, it has these open parts which are filled with a clear part, which we'll get to in a few minutes, where the radio antennas should be. Don't know why they did it this way. It seems to me it would have been easier just to have that as a basic, filled in piece of plastic. As to look at cabin photos of the 172M, there is no sort of vertical clear window there, so something to be aware of. The spinner is good. It's pretty basic. Detail could be a little better doing the spinner and the cone as two separate parts, but it works for this scale. Now, one major area that tells this is a M is here on the dash. Now, this is where this kit is a little less than detailed, as the details on the front dash are pretty basic and pretty, not very refined. There's no detailing in any of the instrument panels or dials, sorry, and the radio stack is, pretty almost non-visible. They do include all the appropriate light switches and circuit breakers, but again, the detailing is almost lost. Again, another thing to note is that the M does have a bit of a blank spot directly above the yoke, and so that's something to be aware of if you do want to do a different version, as fortunately this can be easily fixed, as you can just drill a hole in right above there for where the attitude indicator should be, and that will easily fix the problem, but it's something to be aware of. Continuing on, we also have our main floor, which is pretty basic, not a whole lot to say there, as well as one of the bulkheads. Continuing on, we obviously have the other side of the fuselage, as well as the bottoms of the wings and the attachment point for the wing brace, as well as the elevator and tail surfaces. Tail surfaces could be a little bit better in terms of the groove between the elevator and the actual tail. Obviously, you can easily fix this just by taking either an X-Acto knife or a panel line cutter and opening that up a tad more. You do get a full engine with this kit, which is a nice inclusion, especially since the engine on the 172 is easily visible, as well as the mounting bracket, which is a nice inclusion to have all this together. Now, this is another area where you can tell it is an M here on the front part of the cowling, and that is by the inclusion of the main landing light here, which, if you, depending on the version you're building, you're either going to have to fill it or go with a slightly different setup, as this includes only a single light piece, whereas I do know on the N it has it as two separate pieces. I believe one for the landing light, one for the taxi light, and for more recent versions I know they moved that from cowling up to the left wing. The pilot seats are passable. Nothing really much to say there. They do the job. They do give you an option for this style seating or this other one, as well as the moving on to the yokes. They're passable. I do know some versions of the 172 have a top bar going across, but this is passable for, I would say, the bulk of them. Now, continuing on to the wheels, one thing you will notice right away is this does have the wheels for an M, which are more of this, flat capped. That took me a while to research and find a good reference photo on that, as I do know on the 172R and S, they have sort of a concave inward styling on the wheel. And in addition, one thing I will say right out is the nose wheel is inaccurate for all versions. So obviously you need to do something about that if you wanted to get it truly accurate. You're also given the wheel covers. Again, you'll have to look at the references for your individual aircraft that you want to do, as some have them, some don't. It's, again, one of those things you're going to have to do a bit of research on. Detailing on the landing gear is passable. There's not a lot to say, especially for this scale, but they do the trick. Everything is where it needs to be. I would say the only thing you need to add is brake wires and hydraulic lines. So, moving on to our clear parts. They're all nice, clear, suitable thickness. Could be a little thinner, but I mean, it's passable. Also, you have all side windows, your front windscreen, more side windows, and again, the aforementioned wing clear parts. Again, I have no clue why they included these in this format, as there is no vertical in the 172. Moving on to the decals. Now, this is where I feel the kit is a big letdown, as you're only giving markings for a single aircraft, and while they do give you all of these stencil lettering for different aircraft, they only give it in this format. As you can even see up here for the main one, it's not the appropriate font italics. So that is another thing to look at, as you will, again, obviously need to check the individual aircraft you want to build. Another thing to also note is that they only give you them in black and white, and again, 172s can come in all sorts of colors, so that's something to be aware of. In addition, a lot of these markings, again, paint schemes vary so much between 172s, it's almost not worth it to talk about that much, but they are here. The details are all in good register. They're not too thick and should go down without too much issues. So let's move on now to our instructions sheet. Now, one thing I did like right away is that they do mention that the interior can be all sorts of different colors, and that why white and or sort of tans are typical. It can be any sort of color, so do look at it and research. But other than that, yeah, the build sequence is fairly straightforward. There's not a whole lot to look out for. Um, I would say only the bit of difficulty would be in getting the engine together and getting it mounted properly, because this is a fairly small mount, so be aware of that. Other than that, it's all looking at trying to figure out where you need to do what to get the appropriate version of the kit you're planning to build. And actually, just notice another thing: this kit does not have the bulge for a GPS antenna, even though some have them now, some don't. Again, look at the individual aircraft you're planning to build. You will need to add some nose weight though if you don't want to use the little stand they include, but that's pretty much a given. So, overall, I would say this kit has good bones. While it does have some issues in terms of accuracy, it's a decent kit and gets you sort of started where you want to go in terms of building a 172. Again, given the wide variety of different color schemes, interior schemes, different versions, you're going to have to do a large amount of research, planning, and what have you. Unless, of course, you plan to just build an M and do it straight out of the box, then yeah, it's a good kit for that. But if you want a accurate to the 172 you have, I would say this kit gets you started, but you're still going to have to do a lot of the legwork. So yeah, that was a look at Minicraft's 1/48 scale Cessna 172. Overall, decent kit, but could use some work. And yeah, given how just how prevalent these things are, I personally learned flying on a 172. So I would say definitely it's a kit if you're a pilot and you've learned to fly on a 172, own a 172. It's one to look at getting. Outside of that, I would say you might be better off possibly skipping it, but it still looks to be a fun build and would make a nice addition to most kit collections. So until next time.